The sun rose over the small village of Dimbala, where traditions and modern life intertwined like the great baobab tree's roots. Among the village's children was Kobe, a bright-eyed 10-year-old boy whose laughter once echoed through the dusty streets. But lately, the light in his eyes had dimmed. He carried a shadow within him, a burden too heavy for his small shoulders. This is a story of how he found his voice and reclaimed his spirit. Chapter 1. The innocence of Kobe was like any other child, curious, playful, and full of dreams. He loved playing in the open fields, racing with his friends, and listening to the mesmerizing stories his grandmother told by the fireside. These stories were more than just entertainment. They were lessons, passed down through generations. He especially loved tales of Anansi the spider, the trickster who always found a way to outsmart trouble. His parents, hard-working traders, left early in the morning and returned late at night, trusting Auntie Morera, their kind but mysterious neighbor, to look after him. Auntie Morera had always been around, a fixture in the community, known for her herbal remedies and whispered superstitions. At first, being babysat by Auntie Morera was uneventful. She would give him food, let him play, and sometimes even tell him her own versions of folktales. But then, things began to change. The warmth in her voice turned colder, her stories grew darker, and the way she looked at him no longer felt like the affectionate gaze of a caretaker. Chapter 2. The darkness creeps. And it started with small things. Auntie Morera would play games that made Kobe uncomfortable, her demeanor shifting in ways that were hard for a 10-year-old to understand. There were strange rules, whispered warnings, and an eerie quietness in the house. One evening, she made Kobe sit in a dimly lit room with her, insisting they play a special game that only adults could teach children. She said it was their secret, that he must never tell anyone, or something terrible would happen to him and his family. Kobe's heart pounded. His mind screamed to run, to say something, but he was frozen in place, paralyzed by fear. Kobe didn't know how to explain it, but something felt terribly wrong. Every time he tried to voice his concerns, a lump formed in his throat. His parents were always exhausted when they returned home, their minds occupied with bills, customers, and responsibilities. He convinced himself that it was just a misunderstanding, that he was overreacting. But the discomfort grew. At night, he began waking up in cold sweats, his heart pounding with nightmares he couldn't remember. He found himself withdrawing from his friends, his laughter fading into the background of village life. He began to dread afternoons with Auntie Morera. His body tensed whenever he saw her, but he remained silent, trapped in his own growing terror. Chapter 3. Whispers in the Wind. One night, as he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the wind outside whispered through the cracks of his window. In his dream, the spirits of the ancestors spoke in hushed tones. A great lion, golden and fierce, stood before him. "You must speak, young one, for silence feeds the darkness," the lion urged. But Kobe felt trapped, afraid that no one would believe him. In the village, stories of the spirits were not just myths, they were guidance. His grandmother often spoke of how the spirits protected those who listened, how dreams carried messages. But how could he listen when fear gripped his very soul? One evening, while sitting by the fire with his grandmother, she told him a story about a boy who had been cursed by silence. The longer he held his secret, the more the darkness consumed him. The boy only found freedom when he spoke. Kobe listened with wide eyes. Was this the spirits trying to speak to him? Chapter 4. The Silent Cry. Days turned into weeks. Kobe's joy faded. He stopped playing with his friends. He wet the bed at night, a shame he could not explain. The village healer noticed his unease, but no one questioned why. His teacher, Miss Nafula, however, saw the shift. She was a gentlewoman with eyes that seemed to see straight into one's soul. "Kobe, "The river of your heart seems troubled," she said one afternoon. Her voice was calm, inviting. Tears welled in his eyes, but he swallowed them down. He wanted to tell her, to tell anyone, but fear kept him silent. If he spoke, would the darkness come for him? One day, Miss Nafula told a story. It was about a boy who carried a secret too heavy for him. In the story, the boy finally shared his secret, and the spirits of the land helped him. Kobe listened intently, his heartbeat matching the rhythm of her voice. He understood. He needed to speak. That day, he stayed after class and whispered his truth. Miss Nafula listened, her eyes filled with sorrow but also determination. She assured him that he had done the right thing. That night, for the first time in a long time, Kobe slept without nightmares. Chapter 6. The storm break's authorities were called. Auntie Marrera was taken away. The village murmured in shock. How could this have happened in their midst? His parents, grief-stricken and guilt-ridden, realized how little they had seen. They embraced Kobe, promising to be there for him. Yet the wounds remained. The absence of Auntie Marrera did not erase the past. Kobe continued to struggle with anxiety. Some nights he still wet the bed. He jumped at shadows, his small hands trembling when people got too close. Healing would take time. Chapter 7. The healing begins. Though the darkness had left, its scars remained. Kobe still woke up in fear. The lion from his dreams returned, guiding him through his healing. Strength is not in forgetting, but in moving forward, it said. His parents, now more attentive, took him to a village elder who specialized in helping troubled spirits. She taught him breathing techniques, gave him charms for protection, and reminded him that he was not alone. With therapy, love, and the warmth of his village, Kobe began to smile again. He found comfort in his grandmother's stories once more, realizing that his story was now part of the village's legacy, a tale of courage. Conclusion. The light returns. The baobab tree, ancient and wise, stood tall in the village square. Under it, Kobe sat, listening to his grandmother's stories once more. This time, he knew he had his own story to tell, a story of courage, of facing shadows, and finding the light again. Final reflection. Kobe's journey is one of many. Across the world, children face silent battles. But through awareness, love, and action, the light can return.